Welcome to Wesley Impact. I'm Keith Garner. Have you ever been challenged to push the boundaries of your thinking in such a way that led you to act out your faith in a way that challenged others? Thank you for joining us. It's a very great privilege that I feel for me to lead Wesley Mission. There are times that require me to make difficult decisions and lead by example, to disagree with the perceived norm in our community, and to stand on the Christian principles that make Wesley Mission the uniquely shaped church that it is, a community organisation of relevance today. Over the years, Wesley Mission has been led by many who took their responsibilities as seriously as I take them. And as a result, Wesley Mission has always been at the front of societal change in our community. In just a moment, we'll take a look at a small part of the history of Wesley Mission and the impact my predecessors have had on Australia's story. And also we'll see the second part of my conversation with Dame Marie Bashir. Having served as Governor of New South Wales for 13 years, from 2001 to 2014, her time in office saw 6 New South Wales premiers, including the first ever female premier, the expansion of the communities in New South Wales, and the establishment of many health and medical services, and the list goes on. I'm looking forward to sharing with you on that second part of that conversation. It'll also be that we're joined by another woman who can be described as someone who pushed the boundaries of the status quo. Robyn Green is an Indigenous gospel singer and a songwriter whose career in Australia has spanned more than 30 years. Always looking to push the boundaries to share her faith, Robyn is one of those Australian respected gospel singers that comes from that wonderful Indigenous tradition, and joins us today with her daughter Christy to sing an original piece called You're the Saviour. And then after that, I'll focus on one of the better known parables of Jesus, that of the Good Samaritan. It's going to be a full programme today to sit back and share with us, because I look forward to sharing with you. To start, here's a look at the efforts and achievements of my predecessors at Wesley Mission. I hope this gives you a background for things to come later in the programme.
The origins of Wesley Mission stretch back to the first Methodist church established in Sydney in 1812. Since our foundation, we have been a community of hope and grace, providing care to those who are frail, lonely, disconnected and marginalised in Sydney and beyond. And throughout our history, we have been guided by a strong line of faithful, passionate leaders. 1812 was a time when liberty, grace and possibility were alive in the early colony. Convinced of the need for someone to guide them, the early Methodists wrote a compelling and successful appeal to the British Methodist Conference to send a minister to the new colony. The Reverend Samuel Lee arrived in Australia in 1815. In 1884, W.G. Taylor was appointed superintendent. A new word and deed policy was developed, committed evangelism coupled with serving the practical needs of the community. It was he who coined the term, a living Christ for a dying world. Taylor retired after 22 years and the Reverend P.J. Stephen took on superintendency. He was followed by the Reverend Samuel J. Hoban, who led Wesley Mission from 1915 to 1921 through the difficult years of the First World War. The Reverend H.C. Foreman succeeded him for a 10-year term until 1931. The Reverend R.J. Williams was superintendent for the next 6 years, serving as leader throughout the Depression. In 1938, the Reverend F.H. Raywood was appointed superintendent, leading until 1958, when the Reverend Alan Walker took up the position. A passionate and outspoken leader, Walker used the media extensively and attracted both praise and criticism for his dynamic leadership style. Into these shoes, the young Gordon Moyes stepped. It was in 1978 that the Reverend Gordon Moyes began his 27-year tenure of superintendency, overseeing the enrichment of Wesley Mission's media profile and continuing the strong word and deed ministry of Wesley Mission. In 1988, Moyes oversaw the extensive redevelopment of the old Lyceum Theatre in Pitt Street, Sydney. A new building was designed and built, containing a theatre, church, head office and conference centre. Gordon Moyes retired from superintendency in 2005 and Keith Garner took up the role, a position that he continues in today. It is remarkable to see how things have grown at Wesley Mission. Today, more than 2,000 staff and 3,000 volunteers continue in the footsteps of those who have gone before, caring for those in need and sharing the generous love of Jesus Christ without fear or favour. If you would like to see more of the work of Wesley Mission, visit wesleymission.org.au. You can watch loads more videos, catch up on past episodes of Wesley Impact TV, find out about our diverse range of services and get involved to help make a positive difference in your community. You can also connect with us on social media and stay up to date on the latest news and information from Wesley Mission. wesleymission.org.au.
Please do visit our website to find out more about our work and to contact any areas of Wesley Mission. The website is there for you, wesleymission.org.au. Last week we showed the first part of my conversation with Dame Marie Bashir, filmed at a public event hosted by Wesley Mission earlier this year. In that interview that I shared with the former governor, we spoke about her early and personal life. We'll pick up the conversation today looking at her time in public life. Now, life at Government House was certainly interesting. You loved living there, I know, and all that went with that. But you shared with me the joy of welcoming schools and children into Government House when you were governor of the state. And you told us that lovely story of the little girl, the Aboriginal girl.
Oh, yes. She keeps in touch. Well, one of the joys of being governor is to see and interact with so many of the young people. And my area of specialisation in medicine was child and adolescent health. And Government House was open, therefore, to the schools from all over the state, and that was a joy to interact with them. One day a group came down from the most southern part of our state's southwest, Kumiella, and this rather brash and delightful youngster came up to me and she said, "Oh, you wouldn't come down to Kumiella, would you?" And I said, "Well, I'm ashamed to tell you, I'm not sure that I know where it is, but if you told me where it is, I could certainly give serious thought to coming there." So she explained that it was down in the farthermost corner of the state. You'd have to fly to Albury and then drive, quite a distance to get there. And I said, "Well, now I can't just turn up. If I had an invitation, I'd certainly consider coming down." So in due course, an invitation came from the school, and I did fly down to Albury, and then the flying doctor took me the rest of the way. And we landed in a paddock and went over to the school. And of course, one of the reasons that I was drawn to going there wasn't just the distance or to honour this youngster's request. She was Aboriginal, and there are a lot of Aboriginal children at that school, so I thought that would be important to get the message across that they counted. Tamika was very, very delighted and going round introducing Mari, her friend, to everybody. It was delightful. Come on, So I did whatever she wanted that day and then flew back to Sydney. But before I went, I said to her, "Well, now, okay, Tamika, I've done something for you and I've enjoyed every moment of it, but I want you to do something for me now." And she said, "What is it? I'll see if I can." And I said, "You can." "I want you to finish your schooling right through to the high school certificate and then go on after that and do something in a way that you can help your wonderful people, the longest living civilisation and culture on the planet, and we need people like you who are assertive and So she said, okay, well, we used to keep in touch by telephone. She passed a high school certificate. She rang me one day very excited. She'd won a scholarship to one of the Victorian universities, and now she's a teacher. So these are the delights in life along the way.
In the area that you worked in, psychiatry and mental health in general, sometimes people perhaps would have the perception that you don't see results, but the kind of conversation that we're having would indicate you do. If the right care is given, somebody can both recover and build their life.
Oh yes, indeed. Working with the family too, very often these children were high achievers and very self-critical. And what they wanted above all was the blessing, gentlemen of their fathers. They knew that their mothers were there loving forever, but sometimes father in his hope for the youngster to achieve their potential may have appeared critical. So the role of the father is enormously important in young people achieving a very well integrated life, I believe.
One of the characteristics of your life is a genuine modesty about achievements, about things that matter to you. But I have to say that it was a joy to pray with you in your office and to know that the Christian faith means such a lot to you. You worship regularly at St James, a neighbour here of Wesley Mission, and of course this is such an important week in Holy Week, and I wondered if you'd be prepared to say something of what the Christian faith means to you, of what this week might mean to you.
Oh well, yes indeed. The overriding thought I have is of the character of Jesus Christ. I think when we were chatting, I said, you know, he was a young man knocking around with his friends. You know, if any of them got out of line, he'd say, if you think you're so good, you know, you could translate what was going on with the disciples and Jesus into modern day Aussie language, really. And there was this man with an incredible capacity for love, and above all, his last words on the cross, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. It's that capacity for forgiveness and going on, spiritually or in one's physical life, but even having that sense that all is not lost if one is forgiving and loving to the very end.
Look, I hope you enjoyed the second part of that interview. It's always good to see how people of faith are not afraid to stand for what they believe and to use their influence to motivate others, no matter what position they hold in society. Joining us to sing now is another woman who stood the test of time. Robyn Green is an Indigenous gospel singer and has been sharing her faith through her music for the past 30 years. I've really enjoyed getting to know Robyn a little bit, and over that time she's released 8 albums and sung to hundreds of thousands of people. Robyn and her daughter Christy join us today to sing You're the Saviour.
Heard the cries of your people, just like you hear mine. You never leave nor forsake us. You're a constant embrace when we're trapped by what's around us. No way to see through. You go before and you make a way. When you lead, we will follow, knowing you will be there. And when trouble seems ocean deep, you will part the sea. You're the Savior, our deliverer. darkness. You're the Savior. Have no fear, our God is with us, a shield from the storms. So lift your hands, proclaim the victory, believe in His word. Walk by faith and not by sight. Have your heart set on the prize of eternal life. When you lead, we will follow, knowing you will be there. And when trouble seems ocean deep, you will part the sea. You're the Savior, our deliverer. You have fought the battle and won. Like a knight on a white horse, you are now hero. The world is searching for, shining light in the darkness. You're the Savior. You're the Savior, our deliverer. You have fought the battle and won. Like a knight on a white horse, you are our hero. The world is searching for, shining light in the darkness. You're the Savior. You're the Savior. The Savior of the world. Yes, you are. Oh, yes, you are. You're the Savior.
Over the years of Wesley Impact, Keith Garner has had hundreds of conversations sharing stories of hope, resilience, love and the Christian faith. Perspectives on Faith and Leadership is a collection of inspiring and insightful conversations with people who are leaders in their field, including the New South Wales Police Commissioner Andrew Scipione, CEO of Lifeline Australia John Brogden, the inventor of the cochlear ear implant Professor Graham Clark, founder of Shed Happens Ian Watto Watson, respected Australian journalist Lee Hatcher, and the former Chief Inspector of the New South Wales Police Gary Raymond. Each conversation shares a unique perspective on leadership and the achievements of notable community leaders, and collectively presents a broad cross-section of leadership styles that have brought positive social change. Perspectives on Faith and Leadership is the first instalment of a 3-part series and is available now from Wesley Mission. To find out more, contact Wesley Mission on 02 9263 5555 or email impacttv@wesleymission.org.au.
And so I'm continuing in Luke's Gospel, and we're in Luke 10, and it's a passage that begins with what I think is a striking text. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Now, this is a passage which contains several questions between Jesus and the lawyer. The questions all seem to proceed in a straightforward manner. And Jesus brings the dialogue to a conclusion with one final question. And I'll read that to you too, from verse 29 in this particular passage. These are the words that we read there. But he wanted to justify himself. So he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbour?" Still one of the most fundamental of all questions. And who is my neighbour? And the parable of the Good Samaritan concludes with the question, reading in verse 37, the expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." Very powerful. Something very, very real that happens in that particular section. You see, in the Good Samaritan, a story that many of us are familiar with, a priest and a Levite feature in the story. And they may have had very justifiable reasons for not caring for a man who'd fallen down. I don't think that Jesus has got it in for these people. He's just using them as being important illustrations. but the Samaritan did all that he could. You see, so often Jesus told stories that had three aspects to them, three characters, three cameo stories, things that were gathered together in threes. But it is the most unlikely of the three, the Samaritan, that did what was most required. And he's the one that demonstrates what neighbourliness is all about. And you see, the parable is powerful. And the conclusion of the parable says it all. So you go through this parable. You see an example of a man in need and somebody who is very, very much about getting on his way to do something that's important about religion, somebody who's got responsibilities. They're all people who have decent reasons for not being able to stop. But there's obviously a busy man, because we're told in the parable that the man who did stop, the Samaritan, was so busy he had to go away once he'd put him there and come back and pay on his return for the expenses incurred by this particular man being taken into care who'd fell among thieves. And you see, the unlikeliness of the one that will care is really a picture of what it must be for us if we're to be engaged, involved as real neighbours in our society, in our world. If we're to be followers of Jesus, it'll be very much that we're prepared to be the unlikely one. We're prepared to recognise in the unlikely one the one that shows compassion, care and love. It's a marvellous story, the Good Samaritan. You know, I think it's taken for granted. There are two parables that I think that's true of. What we know as the lost sons, the prodigal son, some will remember it as, and the Good Samaritan. They're very, very powerful. And there's never been a better, more significant time for us to understand the need for us to be neighbours. Neighbours in our community, neighbours in Australia, neighbours with those who've come to Australia and are knowing what it is to be finding themselves in a new country and nowhere to turn. We need to be those people doing the unlikely thing in the unlikely place to the unlikely person from the unlikely one. You know, it's really, really powerful. I think it's not just a children's story told once or twice, but it's one that powerfully impacts upon our social view of society and what we're going to do for other people. And Jesus, I think, was inviting people to make a choice. Choose, if you like, which one out of these three is the neighbour. Choose, if you like. Is it the one who's carrying out religious duties? Is it the one who's got responsibilities? Or is it the one who stops, puts himself in danger to be willing to help the one in trouble? Now, I think that really does resonate with real needs that we have today in terms of understanding what our neighbour is. And then, you know, the reason why we can apply it in this kind of way to our society is summed up really in those words that are there. The expert in the law, which of these three do you think was the neighbour to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? That's the question. The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. And then that text concludes. Jesus told him, go and do likewise. I mean, we may not find ourselves having to be there when people fall into trouble, but we might have to be the good neighbour, the one who is, if you like, the Good Samaritan to those in need in our modern Australia, in our cities, regional areas, and amongst people in need. And our guests today on this show, both in conversation and in music, have had to understand that in their own lives. This is a parable that says it all.
If you would like to contact Keith and find out more about today's program, write to us at Wesley Mission, Post Office Box A5555, Sydney South 1235. Or you can send an email to impacttv@wesleymission.org.au. On our website, you can catch up on past episodes of Wesley Impact, find out more about our work, read online magazines and articles, and connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. You can also connect to Keith's blog and stay up to date on all of the latest news and information from Wesley Mission. wesleymission.org.au.
Now, please don't hesitate to reach out if you'd like to comment on this episode of Wesley Impact, or if you've got some questions about the Christian faith. The email address to connect with us is impacttv@wesleymission.org.au. Also, information about all that we do at Wesley Mission is available on that website. I hope you enjoyed listening to Dame Marie Bashir and Robyn Green today. It's wonderful to be able to celebrate the influence of two women who are not afraid to stand for what they believe and challenge the status quo to help shape the world around them. So I'm just so privileged to have talked with both of them. Thank you again for joining us and sharing with us in this episode of Wesley Impact. Become a regular. Come and join us every week. So I look forward to the same time next week. And until then, God bless you.
Wesley Mission's volunteers provide more than 130,000 volunteer hours each year. To find out more, visit wesleymission.org.au.